So today we are going to talk about drawing some sweets and treats. And what better way than to start by looking at a nice plate of cookies. I actually want to eat these instead of draw them. But we're going to talk about how to draw some basic shapes, and we've got all these lovely wrinkles and chocolate chips and other things that we're going to be looking at today. So I'm just going to move that off camera. I'm not going to get the crumbs on the table, but a lot of the treats that we draw, we start with basic shapes. So in this case, I could actually just trace the cookie, and it's a pretty round cookie, but not all cookies are round. This one, as you can see, has got a little bit of a different shape to it. One thing to note, I'm going to wipe my fingers off. When you are drawing and you want to eat something like a treat, or maybe some crackers or some potato chips, it leaves oils on your fingers, and those oils can get on your paper. So if you're going to be coloring your final picture, be sure that your fingers are pretty clean. That's why I don't really want to touch the cookies much more, because I could be getting the oils on my paper. So to draw a cookie, yes, it could be a perfect circle, but it's actually that it's not a perfect circle that gives us more realism to it. So I'm going to have my 3 cookies, and they're on a plate. And I don't want to draw too dark because it'll be harder to erase. The plate is going to be more perfect, so that I want smoother. Notice that I'm not drawing a circle by doing short, jagged lines. I want smooth lines. My hand can do nice, smooth lines if I let it just do its thing. And then my cookies are going to be here, and I gradually add more details. So we know we've got a big chocolate chip, maybe part of a chocolate chip over here, another chocolate chip, and there's some wrinkles, there's some marks. Make it irregular. Don't have the chocolate chips evenly spaced out. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. Actually, when I make cookies, I tend to carefully place the chips on top of the wad of dough in such a way so that they do evenly space out nicely when they bake, but that's just me being very particular about the way my cookies look when I bake them. So in reality, they're going to have a lot more irregularity to them. So you don't have to be quite so particular. Okay, so we've got a few details of our cookies, and then we're going to want to darken this up so that it's a little bit more visible. So this is where I come in with my pen. And remember, we want it to be a little bumpy, so instead of doing a perfect circle, I'm going to try and not lift my hand. I want it to be nice and just a little lumpy, not too lumpy, just enough that it's got some character to it. There we go. And we're going to have chocolate chip here and a chocolate chip there. Here a chip, there a chip, everywhere a chip chip. And we're going to draw some wrinkles in, just a few. We don't want the chip to look like they're diseased. We just want it to look like it's got some things going on. We don't have to be exact. We're not doing realism here. We're doing more of a comic-y style. So we don't need it exact. And there we go. And we'll do a little bit more details. There we go. Those look yummy. Okay. And then I'm going to do more of a smooth movement for this plate. And I'm going to turn the paper because my hand can do a natural curve best at that angle. And if we did this right, there we go. Okay, so we've got our nice plate of cookies. Just to make the plate look like it's not just a big flat circle, I'm going to add a couple of suggestive reflect marks. And at this point, I erase. If you haven't erased before, you stick your hand down here and always erase in one direction. And because I was drawing nice and lightly with my pencil, then it should be easy to erase. Now, if I were doing this for one of my regular illustrations, then I'd actually use a tracing table, and I would just kill another tree by tracing onto a separate piece of paper so that I didn't have to worry about erasing. But if you're drawing and coloring on the same piece of paper, then it's best if you hold it down, and we're not scrubbing back and forth. We're doing long, smooth strokes. That way we're not destroying the paper fibers. Have you ever sat there and scrubbed at something back and forth really hard and then you've ripped a hole in the paper? Yeah, we don't want that. So we do smooth strokes with the eraser to clear the paper. Now, usually I just brush this off, but because I've got a plate of cookies there that I don't want to ruin, I'm going to dust it off screen. There we go. And we're good to go. Okay, for our plate of cookies, we've got limited range of colored pencils because we're using a pretty basic set. So it's going to be hard to get that exact color of brown. The light brown, the dark brown, the in-between brown, the chocolate brown. So we build up with lots of other colors to get something that feels like it. So I do have this weird brown color. Let's see what colors I've got to work with. And I've got kind of reddish brown. Oh, I do have a dark brown. And what else have I got in here? Oh, I've got a gray. Okay. We're doing pretty good. And I've got black. So I've got a range of colors that I can work with. And it might not be exactly what we need, but we're suggesting the colors of the cookie. So this lightish weird, what is this, sienna? Sienna. This is probably the closest, and it's probably going to be a little on the yellow side, but that's okay. I'm going to color in circles very lightly, building up my colors. And I don't want to crush the paper, because if you crush the paper fibers, then it's harder to layer the next colors on top. So I'm going to lightly color without seeing streaks. So my pencils are a little on the dull side. I hope my personality isn't that dull, but the pencils might be a little dull. And that's okay, especially if you're coloring a large area and you don't want it to look like it's got heavy lines. So when we color lightly in circles to lay down colors, it's called scumbling. Okay, so I've got a base color of this lightish brown color. And I'm not really using fancy colored pencils, and that's okay. I'm also not using fancy paper. if you are working on good sketchbook paper, it's going to be a little bit softer and it's going to have more tooth to the surface and it will pick up the color better. But we're trying to use some everyday supplies that you might already have kicking around the house. So we're using basic colored pencils. There we go. And with the cookies, I don't want streaks, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, the cookie surface is wrinkled and layered, and so it's not going to be perfect. So we're having it a little imperfect is a-okay. All right, and just like we did with the pencil work, we start basic and then we work our way into details. So now that I've got a flat color down, we can add darker things. So I'm going to take this dark brown, I'm going to head and darken in my chocolate chips. And I don't want to push too hard because I don't want to crush the fibers of the paper. When you push too hard with colored pencils, you'll get a smooth, shiny surface, and it's nearly impossible to layer on darker colors at that point very evenly. So you don't want the smooth look afterwards. Okay, so I darkened my chips a bit. I'm going to take that same brown that I used on the chocolate chips, and that's my next darker color. So I'm going to lightly add some shadows in. And I'm not trying to be perfect. Remember, we're just doing a fun illustration. So I'm going to make a little bit of a shadow under the lip of this top cookie. Doesn't have to be perfect, just suggest that the two are overlapping. There we go. And I'm going to darken a little bit, just add some variation to the cookie surface. Give it a little bit of life to it. Okay, on this bottom cookie, again, I'm darkening the most right where it's overlapped the most. So I'm just going to darken a little bit there and throw in some marks over here just to give it some life. These I'm just throwing in some random stray marks, and they don't have to be perfect. Remember, we are not doing realism here. We want cookies. We care more about eating the cookies than we do about making the cookies look perfect. And I'm going to throw a shadow in on this edge. And again, make some marks throughout my cookie. I just want to eat those cookies. Okay, so we've got a lighter brown, a darker brown. Still looks kind of flat. So this is where I'm going to throw some random colors in to give it a little bit of life. This is a purpley brown. And it's okay if I add a little bit of this reddish into my brown. It's going to just liven up. You can throw all sorts of colors, especially into the shadows, to liven things up a bit. So one color that I particularly like, and I've used it many times, and if you watch some of my other videos, you'll see that I enjoy it, is actually, there's this dark purpley blue. Let's go for a different dark purpley blue. Oh. Okay, we'll stick with this one. And I can add blue into the shadows because shadows tend to have blue in them. You're thinking, but there was no blue in those cookies. No, you're right. There was no blue in the cookies. But it's my picture, and so if I want to add some dark purpley blue into it to make the shadows more interesting, then I can. It's called artistic choice, and it's okay. So I'm adding some dark purpley blue into my shadows, particularly where the cookies meet. this lovely, got the cookies themselves. They're looking great. I'm gonna just add a little bit more color to them. They still look a little flat on the main area. So you can see, because I didn't crush the paper fiber, I can go back in and I can keep adding details. So many, many light layers make for the illustration to be more interesting instead of just having one flat color. There we go. Yum. Okay, I've got this light, this is a cool gray, and I've got slate. I didn't even know I had a slate color. And I've got this blue. So because the cookies are kind of on the warm tone, they're more of browns and reds and purples. Well, purple could be a cool color. To make it look a little more interesting, the plate, I don't want it to look completely flat. But the plate I'm going to make more on the cool white side. And so to do that, I'm taking this cool gray. This must have come from a 24 pack of colored pencils. And I'm giving it mostly, do you see that I'm keeping my shadows kind of on the downside of these cookies? So I'm giving the edge of the plate here a little bit of a shadow to make it look rounded. And I'm going to give it a shadow under the cookies. So it looks like they're sitting off the plate a little bit. There we go. Happy plate of cookies. I've got those shadow marks. I'm just going to continue those around, pretending that even though the plate didn't have real lines, it just makes the illustration look a little bit more interesting. And again, that's artistic choice. I got a little bit of a line there. It's really hard to erase colored pencil, but if you've been doing it lightly, you should at least be able to clean it up a little bit. There we go. Might not be perfect. Okay, in the cool gray shadows, I'm going to take a blue, add a hint of this light blue, and you can guess what color I'm probably going to throw into those shadows as well, since these are definitely cool shadows. I mean, I want the plate to look white, so I'm just giving it the barest hint of color around the edges so that it stays more on the whitish side. But yeah, I'm going to take that dark purpley blue and I'm going to throw that down under the cookies, in the shadows. Even though there was no purple visible on my cookies, these are no purple cookies. As an artist, I can throw whatever colors in I want. And it's still pretty subtle. That's okay. All right, and then just to pop out the colors a bit, I'm going to take something. What have I got here? I don't even know what color this is. I'm going to use pencils. And this time I'm going to just suggest that it's on a table. The table's not important, so I'm kind of scribbling some colors on just so that the plate isn't floating out there in space. And I'm okay that it's scribbly because this is stylized. But there we go. When we're done, notice my hand isn't comfortable around that curve up there, so I'm going to move my paper. Okay, when we're done with this color, it looks a little flat. at least it's not on a plain table. So I'm going to come in, and you can probably guess what color I'm going to grab. That purple. Oh, that dark purpley blue. There we go. Give it a shadow on that down edge. Keeping all of my shadows consistent on the cookies, between the cookies, and even on the table. And when we're done, we have this lovely plate of cookies. If you want to add a little bit more life to it, on the sunny side, I'm going to take some yellow. And on the opposite side from the shadows, I'm just going to warm everything up a bit, even on the plate. And not a bunch. I don't even know how much it's going to show up on camera, but I just throw a little bit of yellow in to warm it up and give it a little bit more variation, and great. We've got this lovely plate of cookies. I don't know if it bears resemblance. It's actually not too bad. Okay, we're doing great. So I'm going to put my pencils away. Thanks for joining us today. Check out the other fun drawing videos, and we'll see you again next time.